On the December 29th, 1992 episode of Later with Bob Costas, Jason Alexander was the guest, and he was talking about playing George Costanza. And at that point, the series was still just a critical hit, not a ratings hit. And George talked about George. Oh my gosh, he is trapped in the character, and they talked about that. It might be because I'm getting dizzy, but they also talked about him being in Pretty Woman and being on Broadway and giving up that career to be on Seinfeld just because the pilot made him laugh, and I'm going to fall.
Thanks for staying up later. Jason Alexander is here. He is, of course, George Costanza on the Seinfeld show. Now, it always seems easy to say through the rearview mirror, hey, this guy's a natural. He's the only guy that could do it. But when it was first presented to you, did you grab it, or were you kind of...
Yeah, when George was presented, I grabbed it. I wasn't particularly looking to do more television. I had a moderate experience on television, and I was very happy being a New York stage actor. But I read this pilot, and I laughed out loud, and I said, "Well, I don't know. You got to do this. I mean, this is funny. It's not going to run, but it's funny."
You didn't think it would last?
None of us thought. You know, in the back of your head, you hope, you cross your fingers. We all went. The audience for this show is me, and I don't watch TV, so. Who are we playing to?
Right.
And we all thought, there's no way. We'll have a good time, and that'll be the end of it.
And in truth, the critical response still outruns the ratings of the show. The ratings of the show are decent enough, so it's on the air, but it isn't the runaway hit that it is in terms of perception.
It's a strange thing. Our ratings don't seem to reflect our viewership. Everywhere we go, people go, hey, I saw the show, and they're quoting lines. It's like being on Star Trek. We have Trekkies out there. But the numbers come in, they go 37, 38. You know, we're sitting in a sort of rating limbo. But the show seems to have a huge audience, and the critics were kind to us from day one.
Funny as it is, it obviously has a darker side than almost any sitcom you're going to find on mainstream TV, maybe something on cable, but on the network you're not going to find anything that's this consistently dark, and your guy would pretty much sum that up.
Yeah, Jerry always said if we ever spun the George character off, the series would be called This Poor Man.
Insecure, unemployed, prospects bleak.
Yet happy and content in his own way.
How do people relate to this guy when people see you in the street?
I'll tell you the most disturbing comment is people go, you're me. I'm exactly like George. And I just find that so pathetic. I'm so sorry for these people when I see them. And I go, you know, therapy's a wonderful thing, and I try and convince them. It's an enormous reaction. You know, the shows have always been, or tried to be for the most part, about things that we all go through every day. And can't quite seem to laugh out when we go through them, and we just give them a little twist, and all of a sudden people go, oh, oh, oh. And you know, you love people for doing that, if they make your lot in life seem a little less lotful.
Isn't there such a word? So they see themselves pretty much then as people who could, in the right set of circumstances, have sex with the cleaning lady at the office.
Oh, sure. Doesn't that happen all the time?
Certainly not here at NBC.
I don't know, on the elevator ride on the way. Well, all right, it's another story.
What's your favorite episode? Can you pinpoint one?
Yeah, not that it was the funniest or the, you know, the most creative. The Chinese restaurant episode that we did was the first episode where we read it at the table, and the company went, ooh, and the network went, I don't know, you've got nothing's going on, it's people waiting for a table, it's one scene, do what you want to do. The network kind of went, do what you want to do. And we shot it in front of the audience, and the audience went nuts, and that was the first time that I looked at the show and went, this is going to be special. We may not hang around for a long time, but it's going to be a really special show.
I'm sure the one that now is the most talked about is the masturbation episode, in which that word, or any euphemism for that word really, was never uttered, but it was clear from the start what it was about.
Yes, indeed. I think the way we said it is I was telling a story about how my mother caught me, and I merely say I was alone.
I zipped up!
That was an amazing show, and, you know, again, God bless NBC, they let it go. And the amazing thing was, no critical response to it whatsoever, because I guess nobody really wants to come down for or against masturbation. It's quite a stand to be taking. But yeah, that was the show that everybody has been.
So there wasn't an avalanche of outraged
TV Guide
mail?
did not give us a cheer or a jeer, and the Christian Science Monitor left us alone completely, and People didn't even have a blurb. So,
You know, it probably is at a point where there's not that much sampling of the show going on. I mean, you got your audience, and the people in your audience say, hey, this is inventive. How can they handle this subject?
exactly. That's all they do. They sit back and go, take us.
Is it important that almost everybody involved in the show has a New York background? Because even though it's shot in L.A., it has a complete New York feel.
It does indeed. You know, and strangely, Michael has never lived in New York. Jerry's from here. Julia spent a little time here. She's not really a New Yorker. They write it in such a way that, you know, it comes out that way. But a lot of people think we shoot here. We don't shoot here. And we create amazing things. One of the most amazing things I ever saw them do is in the parking garage thing where we couldn't find our car in this multi-tiered parking garage. That was our set. They took out the apartment, they took out the coffee shop, they took out the audience seats, and they built a parking garage. And the guy that designed the thing was denied an Emmy Award because everyone thought we went to a parking garage and shot it. And it was just amazing what they're able to do, and then with second unit footage and plug it in, and it feels like New York.
Look at this.
I mean, this character makes such a strong impression. Is it any concern at all that once this is over with, that it follows you? That when you walk on stage, I mean, you're a Tony Award-winning performer. When you walk on stage, people will go, there he is, George.
You know, it was a funny thing. Yeah, that you always worry about that. I just did a play out in Los Angeles where I played Harry Truman. And it's a one-man show, and they put, Marquis said, Seinfeld's Jason Alexander as President Harry Truman. And people are thinking, what a wacky President Harry was. I dropped the bomb, I dropped the bomb.
The bomb? Well, you know, I didn't even know we had the damn thing until you left us. And Secretary Stimson came in and briefed me on it. I found out at work the day after I arrived in Potsdam and told Stalin about it. He just shrugged his shoulders and walked away like he'd known about it all along, which the son of a bitch probably did.
You know, people that didn't know from Truman and didn't know from me as a stage actor all came in expecting a raucous good time, and I'm talking about firing MacArthur. And so that's hard. Fortunately for me, I had one little piece of national prominence before I went in and did George, and that was Pretty Woman. It was the first thing that really sort of introduced me to an audience that was bigger than the New York stage audience. And it was so unbelievably different from George that if you can get people to remember that I'm the same guy, I don't think they have a problem with stereotyping or typecasting. But you know, every offer I get now is for you know, the biggest schlemiel in the world, and I have to keep going. Couldn't I play one other thing? Couldn't I be the friend of the schlemiel? And yeah, something.
The Pretty Woman character wasn't funny like George, and he wasn't really a schlemiel because a schlemiel by definition is lovable.
Right.
But he was a jerk.
He was a jerk. Yeah, he was a slimy lawyer, which I'm told is redundant. And it was not a part that anybody thought I should have. Gary Marshall did not want me for it. It was a last-minute thing, and it just happened to work out right.
Who did they have in mind?
I can't tell you.
No, yeah, you can.
I can't. He had an actor that was right on the money. It was one of these actors that you look at and go, oh, yeah, this is the minute he comes on, you go, yeah, I hate him already. And Gary didn't want me because he felt I was too young and too baby-faced and too short. And in the original script, there was a big fight scene between Richard and my character where he beats the hell out of me. And there was, you know, Richard's rather tall and I'm 5'6", and they were concerned that it would look like he was beating up a dwarf. And since this was a Disney film, they're particularly concerned about that image there. So it was a lot of trouble getting the part. And I got there, and that whole movie was a giant fly by the seat of your pants thing. Gary was not interested in the script, and he, you know, we're ad-libbing left and right, and I'm trying to keep up with this guy who I know doesn't want me there to begin with, and he's asking me to ad-lib things that have nothing to do with the document in front of us. Absolutely nothing, and I'm thinking, should I be a good actor and go, well, you know, my research tells me that, or should I just kiss his behind and hope I don't get fired? And I went with kiss his behind and hope I don't get fired.
Good choice.
I thought so. And we turned out to have a great relationship, and he made a hit movie, which none of us expected.
When you did Truman, were you concerned about the physical type? Now, James Whitmore had done that one-man play before, right? And it was almost definitive. And
I would say, yeah, exceptionally so.
Did you have to overcome that somehow?
I never worry about, most of my career, particularly in the theater, has been not to play one guy in an evening, but to play 9 or 10 or 11. And so for me to jump into different people's bodies and skins and voices, that's easier for me than playing one guy. So I never worried about, am I going to come off as Truman? What I worried about is, can I get to his emotional truths, and can I find the essence of the man? Not, can I sound like him, can I look like him?
Well, the best example, or at least the most celebrated example of what you were talking about, playing multiple characters, was Jerome Robbins' Broadway. When you get the Tony Award for this, and you're how many different characters in the course of the play?
About a dozen, I think.
And characters played by recognizable names of the stage, by Zero Mostel and Herschel Bernardi, right?
Herschel Bernardi, sure, the whole gamut.
I mean, for people who might not know, it's a compilation of some of the most memorable scenes and bits and songs from the classic Jerome Robbins musicals over the years.
Right.
And was it, obviously it became something you could do in a snap, but going in, was that a little intimidating? Did you say, hey, someone's going to say, wait a minute, is he as good as Mostel was?
I never thought about that. I never thought, only because I never saw Mostel do Tevye, so I can't be intimidated by what I haven't seen. And I knew if I worried about, and I'm not as good at baggy pant comics, so when you're doing the funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, you can't even think about him. He was brilliant at that. I can't get near it. So I do what I do. I play off the audience that I have. I have the man that created the number standing in front of me going, try this, try that. And you trust him, and you trust your own instincts, and you don't worry about that.
Looking through some of the research, I saw some of the reviews, and one reviewer said, Jason Alexander doesn't so much make you want to compare his performances to those who have created the classic roles. He makes you recall them fondly. And I don't know whether you take that as a compliment or not, but it seems to me that that probably was what Robbins had in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it was a show about nostalgia. I mean, a large part of what our audience was doing was going, oh, do you know what I was doing and where I was in my life when I first saw this thing?
Yeah.
So a lot of it was to elicit those kind of memories and responses. I was very flattered by that. I also had, I could show you a packet of reviews that are the most unflattering things I've ever seen in my life. I had to actually think, did I offend these people? Did I send them a bad letter at some point? This is such a personal thing.
What do you do to get past that? Because I've had people say, I don't read the papers, I don't read reviews. And maybe a tiny percentage of them are telling the truth. But it's human nature, it's too much human nature not to take a peek.
Sure.
And I don't care how successful you've been, if somebody doesn't offer a constructive criticism, but instead just seems to dismiss you, to be disdainful of you and who you are, that hurts.
You can take it very personally, and particularly in New York, the critical community has become, it's almost devoid of what having to do with anything with the theater. They are having a competition among themselves, who can be the cleverest, the most acerbic, the most spectacular in their description. You know, I'll be very honest with you. I look at a review when I look for my name and the word brilliant or consummate. If I don't see that, I'm just scanning. And if I don't see that, I put it down. So if it's really terrible, someone has to tell me, ooh, did you hear what Joel Siegel said about it? Oh, Joel didn't like it? Don't tell me. What did he say? You know, it's that kind of thing. I read them, but I don't believe them. Somebody a long time ago said to me, if you believe the good ones, you got to believe the bad ones. So I try not to believe either one. But people get destroyed by it. I mean, I think of poor Jessica Lange last year when, you know, here's a woman making a foray into the Broadway theater. She doesn't need this. She's trying to expand herself as an actress, and every critic in New York went, Zets! And she then had to go play the show for another 6 months. I mean, that's terrible.
You wanted to be on the stage from the time you were a kid, right?
Yeah. I think I went and saw Fiddler on the Roof with, I think it was Herschel Bernardi when I was quite young. And that was it. I was done. And as I started to slip into performing, which was merely a self-defense. I was a very, very, very heavy child. And to sort of keep the acerbic comments away from me, I just would copy. I would listen to comedy albums, and I would listen to movies and television shows and whatever I could find, and I would entertain. It seemed to work. So it was just, it started as self-defense, and then somewhere around my bar mitzvah, I went, I could make money off of this, and it just sort of kept going.
Is it an apocryphal story or true that you told your mom when you walked out of Fiddler, I'll do that someday?
It wasn't when we walked out of Fiddler because I was too young. When went off to college. I was an acting major, which she was none too thrilled about. And I said, I tell you what, Ma, within the next 10 years, I will play Tevye for you on Broadway. I'm 17 years old. I missed it by 2 years. I was 29 instead of 27. But that was everything to my mother, everything. The theater was Fiddler on the Roof. There was no other show. Every other Broadway show never existed. Maybe certain moments in South Pacific were allowed to have an existence, but other than that, it was Fiddler on the Roof.
No Neil Simon stuff did it for her?
Yeah, Neil Simon, when he cast Jewish people in the Jewish parts, then it was okay. But, you know, when he has Blythe Danner as the consummate Jewish mother, she didn't quite buy the whole premise.
What's the first thing you ever did that you got paid for?
My bar mitzvah. I very seriously, it never occurred to me because I hated, I had to go every Saturday and every Sunday, and my life was ruined. I had no life. I'm speaking in tongues as far as I'm concerned, and what is the benefit of this? And it struck me, I said, I'm going to be on a stage. I'm going to have my name on the marquee outside, the Alexander Bar Mitzvah, and I have lines and songs, and if this goes well, I could make a small fortune. And frankly, I was a sensation at my bar mitzvah, and I cleaned up. And,
what bit did you do?
I had a haftarah that they still talk about. I mean, you know, you can have you can't as your rabbi's, my haftarah. And then I entertained at the reception. I think I sang Man of La Mancha, as was my way. 13 years old to dream. And that was really it. I got very serious about it after that.
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. And there's GoFundMe and Patreon information in the video descriptions. Thanks for making the channel grow so much.